Hello, my name is Kevin Dodge, and today I'll be reading Storytime with Matt, Part 1, The Empire Strikes Out. I watched Star Wars for the last time in my life when I was 6, or at least I was pretty sure it was the last time at the time. My dad used to tape movies off of TV. He'd record the commercials and everything. He would also save money by renting movies, copying them onto more tapes, and then returning them, which in the end cost about the same as buying the movies new, but still, he had a system. We had to organize his bootleg tape collection once when I was older, which required sorting them into categories, then numbered sections, then letters in those numbered sections. It was quite an elaborate system for nearly 500 VHS tapes. The problem was, his efficient system was to record these movies on a mode called SLP, which could cram up to 6 movies onto one tape. This was genius as long as you could excuse higher pitched voices and music, and when everyone in the movie constantly talked and moved just slightly too fast. But when I was 5, I couldn't care in the slightest. They were just awesome movies. You could always tell when a movie came on that he didn't expect, because about 10 minutes into the movie you started, the screen would fuzz out and another movie would start, but with the first 45 seconds or so missing from that one. This was presumably because he couldn't find a blank tape in time and just jammed whatever tape was close by that he deemed worthy sacrifice to the bootleg gods. One of my favorite panic tapes was Transformers the movie. The movie started after 2 Bugs Bunny cartoons and half of the intro to Brave Star. Dad didn't set the contrast right though, so from the beginning of the movie all the way to the first commercial break was mangled garbage. About halfway through a G.I. Joe commercial, he fixed the contrast and everything was great after that. I watched the tape till I wore it out completely. I've memorized every line and even the commercials and their order, but to this day I can only quote it from the first commercial break onward. I didn't really understand how movies really worked. I didn't get the concept that these were supposed to be one-shot deals. It was lost on me that when one movie ends and 5 minutes into the credits the screen turns to garbage and another movie butts in, that's not normal. To this day, when I watch The Neverending Story and the credits start rolling at the end, I have a small panic attack when Back to the Future Part 2 doesn't magically fire up in the second verse of the ending song. Now, these movies were my babysitters. Mom would park me in front of a TV set and put on a tape before I could even talk. One of my first words was the town Passamaquoddy from Pete's Dragon. Mom, being a preacher's wife, thought I was speaking in tongues. She also thought I was possessed when one day she was doing the dishes and I casually quoted another line from the movie she hadn't heard from the script. It was from the scene where the school teacher basically asked Pete in no uncertain terms what his reasoning was for not going to school. I looked at her calmly and said, "Mama, do you want to be stupid when you grow up?" I still vividly remember her expression when she stared at me like I had just thrown ice water in her face. It was months before she realized it was just a line from the movie. I still hear about that one. Those bootleg movies would make me feel better when I was sick, too. I used to get very sick a few times a year. Not just sniffles and headaches, I mean real sick. I'd projectile vomit 4 different colors like it was a magic trick. I'd stay in bed for a week with a fever that often got up to 104, which I'd wager is one of the reasons my parents still enjoy telling people that I'm brain damaged. Once I hit a certain temperature, I'll guess around 103.5 range, I would start to hallucinate badly and get vertigo. I would grab the sides of the couch or the bed in a panic because I was absolutely certain that the room had now flipped over and I was about to fall into the ceiling. I would hang on to the side of the living room couch and grit my teeth and brace for the fall. I still don't know why my fevered brain decided that if I was going to fall up, a couch cushion would be a good parachute. Apparently this was hereditary because when Mom would get a super high temperature, she would start hallucinating and seeing peach trees everywhere. She would sit in bed with a fever and pick peach trees with a spiked fever just as high as a kite. Fever hallucinations, the genetic gift that keeps on giving. When I was sick, Mom would bring me Sprite and pancakes constantly. Sprite was cheap and made me feel better, I guess, and pancakes were one of the 3 things Mom could make without burning them. Occasionally. The strange trade-off for Sprite is now that I'm an adult, when I get sick, Sprite makes me feel better. But when I'm not sick and I drink Sprite, it immediately makes me feel ill. I Pavloved myself. In between painting the insides of a 5-gallon bucket with return lemon-lime Bisquick combo and spelunking the ceiling, I would lie in a heap under blankets and watch movies. Superman, The Last Starfighter, E.T., and a storm of other tapes kept me company. Enemy Mine with Douglas Quaid used to put me to sleep easily, and to this day, it'll still knock me out like a light if I'm not feeling well. These awful bootleg tapes, hastily labeled in masking tape and magic marker, were my rainy day activities and my summer distractions. These were the tapes that I would watch when Dad rigged up the TV in the back seat on long car trips. These were my friends when I was lonely. These were my guides through life, teaching me how to be brave, how to stand up for myself, and what to do if I was ever a mouse with an oversized hat who was separated from his family on a boat trip to America. I watched these tapes until they fell apart. But one in particular was a tough blow. It was one of the very few tapes that had only one movie on it, so it was special, of course. It was Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, my favorite movie at the time. I absolutely loved it. I quoted it and reenacted the lightsaber duels as best as I could in my backyard. Every time I wore long sleeves, I would spontaneously lose a hand, just like Luke, by tucking into my sleeve and yelling. Mom wasn't a big fan of this. Neither was anybody else, come to think of it, especially during the middle of church services. But one day, at maybe 6 or 7 years old, I wanted to watch Empire again. So into the VCR the tape went. I pressed play just as I had 1,000 times before. The end credits rolled up the screen, slightly too fast because Dad recorded it in an extra squished movie mode again, but forgivably and predictably so. So I hit rewind. I had rewound and fast-forwarded the tapes on this particular family VCR so many times that I could recognize the pitch of the whirring sounds, and I could tell when the tape was almost back to the beginning. I would often count it down like a teeny tiny New Year's Eve just for me. 3, 2, 1, zzz, clunk, it would stop. This particular occasion seemed normal when 3, 2, 1, zzz, flap, 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 flap. I pressed play and the tape ejected. I pushed it back in and the VCR rejected it again like a bad credit card. All I could think to myself was, no, not Star Wars. Why couldn't Milo and Otis break? Not Star Wars! I ran to get Dad. He immediately jumped at the chance to take something apart. He broke out his tool set and started videotape surgery on the kitchen table. I watched and paced around the kitchen like he was a surgeon working on a family pet. Dad kept shaking his head. It didn't look good. We might have to shoot it. He explained that the tape had broken off at the end of the reel. It was a simple remedy to affix it back to the reel with some scotch tape. Dad quietly reconstructed the case and handed it to me with a very serious parental face. He actually sat me down so I would pay attention to the earth-shattering news. As soon as this tape rewinds one more time, it'll break for good. So that means you can only watch this movie one more time. These words hit childhood me like a tiny car accident. This was my favorite movie. Only one more time? I was kind of a dumb kid. It didn't dawn on me later that you could actually go out and buy another copy of the same movie. To me, this was it. The only copy of Empire I would ever see. Dad admitted many years later that he probably could have fixed it to last or simply recorded it onto a new tape, but he just felt lazy that day. But my whole world was rocked. It was like losing a friend. I had to make this time really, really count. Popcorn, drinks, bathroom trips, chores done, my teddy bear Joe, and a handwritten sign in crayon taped to my parents' bedroom that said, "Go away." Note that this was the one and only time I was ever allowed to hijack the master bedroom and get away with it. I was pulling out all the stops. Nothing was interrupting this movie. I fired it up, and despite the perfect setup for a funny story full of distractions, I wasn't bothered once. I was quietly and ceremoniously glued to the screen for the entire, slightly accelerated runtime. I soaked in every laser blast, every lesson about the Force. I felt the heat from Han Solo being tortured and cried when he was frozen in carbonite. I actually felt the tension between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford as they sort of liked and hated each other the whole time. I felt sad for Han for the first time ever when he was really worried about Luke out in the storm. The movie was like one of those magic eye pictures from the 90s. I had watched the movie 100 times before, but this time, everything came into focus. Perhaps it was because I was in some sort of movie hostage time bomb situation, but the entire movie was more magical this time around than I had ever experienced before or since. And with sad, dirty fingers, I actually hugged the TV as the credits rolled for the last time, and I heard the rewind start. No countdown this time. I just sat quietly. Zzz, here it comes. Zip, flap, 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 flap. I was quiet for quite a while. If I remember right, the next day I secretly buried the tape in the backyard somewhere near our shed. Since then, I've grown up, of course. Years after that, I did indeed get to watch Empire again, and even own an old VHS copy and 2 DVD versions by now. But no matter how many times I watch it, it'll never be as magical and epic and important to me as when I was a kid and watched it for the very last time. At some point in our lives, we will watch every movie we've ever seen for the last time. I guess it's the same with friends and family and places and songs too. We never know when the tape will break off the spool and we have to say goodbye. So watch every movie as if it's your last time seeing it. Feel every song as if it'll be off the air forever tomorrow. Hug every friend until you want to let them go. Live every day like it's your last. Laugh loud and often, and may the force be with you. But most importantly, be kind and rewind.